Hey everyone, welcome to Cyber-Conversations, the show where it's okay to agree to disagree. My name's Josh, and today Vern and I are going to finish our talk about Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and I hope you enjoy the show. It's worth mentioning. So we mentioned it. We can move on. But then we get, thank God.
I'm not making a comparison to our conversation so much as like the ongoing conversation online. I just feel like you have a problem with people getting overly passionate about things and hurting each other because of their opinions.
Yeah.
This is one of those places where it's like, man,
it's played out.
I'm not just talking about the romance. I'm talking about the dialogue in general. Like it's just like, I mean, we put way too much credit in the fact that the dialogue is not perfect.
Yeah.
And it's like, get over it. You still get the pew pew. I mean, that's what Star Wars is really all about.
Yeah. But then we get, thank goodness that all of the three monsters, the werewolf-looking one goes after Padme because we got to have her get her midriff slashed.
Oh man,
George Lucas being transparent as ever.
yeah, that really bothered me too. Like honestly, Padme's all white body conformant outfit is my personal favorite that she ever wears.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so sure I need it to be ripped in the middle. I kind of liked it before it was ripped in the middle.
Yeah.
But the fact that this wild beast is able to take a swipe and perfectly cut it off just below her tits without, by the way, scratching her skin. It is a quite amazing
it scratched her
feat.
back. It scratched
the
her
cat
back.
monster. Yeah, okay. But he tore it right across the middle, and if we had blood coming down her belly, it would have ruined the look.
Right.
So that claw cuts through a thin layer of polyester and does not scratch her skin enough to draw blood. And that is so deliberate. It's like, why didn't she just give her a halter top?
Yeah.
And then we wouldn't have had to deal with that. So it's again, I don't want to make a big deal out of it, but it always bothers me how that thing perfectly removes her belly fabric.
Well, watch
and
Galaxy
exposes
Wars.
her belly button.
Right? Watch Galaxy Wars.
Galaxy Wars.
Was that it? The one with Sigourney Weaver and Tim Allen?
Oh, Galaxy Quest.
Galaxy Quest. I'm sorry. Yeah, Galaxy Quest. Perfect takeoff of the whole thing with every single sci-fi movie with a female who has no matter what she wears, it's gonna get torn into strategic places.
Yeah. I feel like there's definitely an easy way they could have made it a little bit more believable. Just my personal opinion.
On the other hand, thank God it was Natalie Portman, because what if that werewolf thing had gone after Anakin, or Obi-Wan, and had his gut all over the place, He would be the one with the midriff. I didn't want to see Anakin with a midriff.
I'm positive if that big green praying mantis would have gone after Padme, one of those arms would have taken that midriff right off anyway. And it would have done it so perfectly that it would have removed the material without scratching her skin.
Yeah. I almost would have liked to see that big thing, just like carefully lifting her up, like peeling off the midriff with its like claw, and then setting her down. There, we got it. Okay, good.
The way they could have done it is they could have. I mean, she was wearing a shirt, so they could have had one of the creatures like grab the bottom of the shirt and pull, and with Padme hanging on or resisting or whatever, the material could have ripped.
Yeah.
And then we wouldn't have to worry about it being a swipe right across her skin. And any one of those three animals could have pulled that. Well, I don't know about the rhino. The rhino probably wouldn't have been able to do it. But the other two animals, either one of them could have pulled her shirt hard enough to be able to rip it right at the midriff. And it would have felt a little bit more believable.
Or, what would have been believable is not having the midriff and just having her in a white shirt. But
I'm sorry. I didn't even know that was an option. Yeah. I thought it was not an option to get to the bare belly.
With George Lucas, it's not an option.
Right. So I wasn't thinking about how we could have avoided it. I was thinking about how we could have done it.
Yeah. Anyway,
I love Natalie.
yeah, I love Natalie Portman too. It's just, it's
Natalie
so.
entertains us all.
But so then we get the fight is, I mean, like that's cool enough. Then we get to see the Jedi show up, um, which is cool because we finally get to
Yeah.
see all of the Jedi. Finally,
Oh yeah, this is the actual opening of the Clone Wars.
yeah,
When all those lightsabers get ignited, it's like, okay, now it's on.
yeah. We get Mace being a badass all on his own by confronting Dooku. Um, Except then, Django throws fire at him and he immediately jumps down so he isn't. I mean, I understand why he jumped off the balcony, but I wanted to see him like threatening Dooku more. But that's okay. We get one of my favorite Jedi, Aayla Secura, but that's the only thing I'm going to mention about her.
And the introduction of the super battle droid,
Yep.
which is cool. It's
Yeah.
pretty soon that becomes like a major element of the Clanker army.
Yeah.
But this is the first time we actually see them, and when they fire those turbo lasers or whatever the hell it is they're wearing on their wrists, it sounds a lot more like blasters on a ship, like on an X-wing or a TIE fighter, than it does the kind of little rifles that the battle droids have been firing so far.
Yeah.
So these are clearly bigger, stronger, more heavily armored, more heavily armed droids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we see the death of Django, which is very significant because it happens right in front of Boba, and so we get this very quick glimpse of a scar that our favorite bounty hunter carries with him his entire life, which lays directly on the Jedi for blame.
Yeah.
Especially Mace Windu, which they follow that story out during the Clone Wars,
Yep.
the
Yeah.
series. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, and we've already talked about it. The only thing we didn't like about that was the whole C-3PO battle droid thing, but we don't really need to talk
Yeah,
about
the
that again.
factory. We don't have to go in. We don't have to
Yeah,
go
because
into
we
all
already
that.
talked about
The
that.
factory was very cool. So let's also mention that the Geonosians, among their other many valuable technological contributions to the galaxy, they apparently were the ones manufacturing. So this is the counterbalance to Camino. We got all of the Republic soldiers coming from Camino. We apparently have all of the droid soldiers coming from Geonosis. So these things were tireless technological engineers, and
Hmm.
they created a massive soldier pumping out mechanism that we get a glimpse to see. So, taking C3PO's nonsense out of the scene, what we have is a very cool glimpse into where all these soldiers were coming from, and respect to the Geonosians for being, maybe horde mentality and basically evil, but not primitives by any
Yeah.
stretch.
Yeah.
In fact, their weird blaster, the Geonosian blaster that like sends out the ring, it almost feels like that is a form of technology or possibly the precursor for the stun blasters that we take for granted in the original trilogy, because they have that same ring sort of impact, and it's almost like a gun designed to start with a small amount of force, but then over time it spreads out, creating a bigger and bigger shockwave. So the further away you are from your target, like a shotgun, the better chance you have of actually hitting your target, and the more force you have to knock your opponent down.
Hmm.
So it's a cool weapon that we don't see anywhere else in the Star Wars galaxy being employed by. I mean, even the Naboo blasters are unique with their own sound effect. It's just, I love the depth of detail that Lucas stirred into all these different races, and without any time to stop and explain anything, you're just like, oh wow, look what they're shooting. That's new.
Yeah.
And then it's also we see the Hellfire droids for the very first time. We see the whole Clone War thing happening for the very first time. We see the droid army come out with the big spider walkers,
Hmm.
and the little spider guys with the circle with the head on the tank cannon on their head. I don't know what
Yeah.
those are called,
Yeah.
and the Hellfire droids, and then we see the little clankers and the big clankers all together, and then we see all the clones, and they're all pew pew back and forth with all these different colors of laser bolts, and the dust is kicking up, and you get a whole bunch of like really like documentary style warfare shots of a real war breaking out, and it isn't until that moment that you're like, oh, this is what Obi-Wan was talking about way back in the beginning.
There was a deleted scene that I think I've seen once. I could swear, but now I can't remember. But I think there was a whole scene of Kai-Adi-Mundi and Mace Windu attacking one of the those round what are they called? Lucre Hulks, the big round ships that was taking off.
Oh,
And
is that what those are called? Okay.
at least
You're
according
talking about
to,
the center of the droid control ships.
I don't think they are. I think they're a separate ship completely. I mean, we
I don't
never
think
saw it.
so. No, no,
I don't
no,
know.
no, because we do see one of them come up and merge with the droid control ship.
I don't remember that. But I do know that, well, at least going by the video games, Jedi Survivor, we actually go on to a Lucre Hulk, and they call it a Lucre Hulk.
Yeah, the battleships, the droid control ships that were called droid control ships in Phantom Menace also are actually called Lucre Hulk class battleships, and they
Okay.
absolutely are detachable in the center. And those spheres that are landed on Geonosis absolutely are the center control station for those battleships.
Yeah. So there you go. But
Yeah.
so I could swear that there was a deleted scene, or maybe I just read about it. Kai-Adi-Mundi and Mace Windu taking one down on their own. We do get to see one get taken down by Yoda. Well, not Yoda himself, but you know the clones that are working under Yoda, where they concentrate the fire on
Oh yeah,
the
in the
ship.
movie, yeah.
Yeah, but I
Yep.
think they. I
Yeah,
don't know if it
and
was
I think
ever.
the beam weapons that we see, the beam weapons that are coming out of the tanks, and the beam weapons that are coming out of the port and starboard, what do you call them, like shooter pods on the side of the clone gunships.
Uh-huh.
Those things are very reminiscent of the Death Star weapon. They are a dish with multiple beams that come together to create a primary beam,
Yep.
and those are incredibly devastating when we see the gunships sort of sidle into the battle, and then there's like a trooper that's inside that, and he's got his own independent control, and he starts the beam, and then he goes in a 40-degree swath across the battlefield and just destroys everything that it touches.
Yeah.
That same look is on the tanks that take down the control ship sphere.
Yeah.
It's a dish at the end of the tank that has multiple emitters that come together to a larger beam. And here we have two pieces of technology on display on the very same planet where the Death Star is being developed,
Yep.
apparently.
Yeah.
So I think
And that
we're
ain't no
looking at an
coincidence.
early precursor. No,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not coincidence. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't remember if it was a deleted scene or if they never filmed it. I know I read about a scene where Coyote and Mace go after it and they take it down from the inside. And I would love to see it if I haven't seen it already. I really can't remember if it was shot at all. But then we get Anakin and Obi-Wan and Padme get into one of those troop transports to chase after Dooku, and they're trying to get to him before he gets to the hangar. Which I don't know how they knew he was headed for a hangar, but whatever. Uh, and then Padme gets knocked out of the ship, and we
Oh,
have
wait a
the
minute.
little.
They
What?
didn't know he was headed for a hangar. They just knew he was headed for somewhere, and
But
so
they
they ended
said,
up at the hangar.
didn't they say we have to get to the hangar? I could swear
That does
one of
ring a
them
bell.
says that.
That does ring a bell.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay. But whatever. I'm
Well, it
not
was
going
in
to
the
complain about
script.
it.
I
I
know
know.
it was in the
I
script
think
for
that they had the
sure.
script with them. You know, they read it.
Now that you mention it, I'm gonna have to see it again and be sure, because
Yeah.
I never picked up on that. I've probably seen the Clone Wars. I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say 13, 14 times minimum.
Yeah.
And I've
Well,
never noticed that they said something that alarmed me that they shouldn't have known that piece of information.
yeah,
But
I
now
think,
that you mention it, it is
yeah.
possible.
I don't know how they knew that they were headed to the hangar, but he was going to the hangar, so it all works out. Maybe
They were right.
if
They
we look
happen to be
closely,
right.
maybe you will see they were reading the script.
Well, now I'm gonna watch it again and be sure.
Yeah. Like the Muppets. It says here that he was headed to the hangar. So they get to the hangar, and I know you don't like the lightsaber fight. but in the prequels alone,
Well, actually, to be fair, I don't know if I don't like the lightsaber fight. I don't like the way it was shot. And the reason why I don't like the way it was shot is because I can't tell what was going on with the lightsaber fight. All I see is his face and a red light, and then his face and a blue light, and then his face and a red light. Maybe it was an awesome lightsaber fight, in which case I'm regretting the fact that I didn't get to see it even more because I didn't get to see it. That's
see,
my complaint. I don't like the way it was shot.
see, and I actually, of all of the prequel movies and the lightsaber
Yeah, you
fights
feel
that
the
we get,
opposite about it.
it's my favorite of the prequels
That's
because
crazy.
it's not a dance routine. Finally,
Yeah. Well,
in
hey, how do you know? Maybe it was a dance routine, and
well, no,
just the camera angles were so tight that you couldn't tell.
a dance routine is something that we see on screen. We don't
I get
see
it.
that, you know. We
I
what we
get it.
see.
I understand.
I like the whole dramatic, dark look with the only light being from the lightsabers. That's drama. That's like putting a fire in the background. It creates a dramatic effect. I enjoyed that,
Yeah.
just like I enjoyed.
Oh, there's
Uh,
nothing wrong with that. Yeah, that's very artsy. It was very artfully shot. I
yeah,
get that. I just like I wanted to see what was going on, and I couldn't see what was going on.
yeah,
I mean,
and I
it might have been. It could have been. You could shoot like that if you have two old men that are really incapable of like doing any kind of real fighting moves, and then you just sort of pass it off as like this titanic collision of
well, not
two,
for nothing.
ancient soldiers or something.
Well, not for nothing, but Count Dooku was played by a pretty ancient guy. Christopher Lee was how old?
I get it. I get it. That's true. And I
Yeah,
think that the alternative may have been to sort of like zoom back and take advantage of Hayden's nimbleness and then CG Dooku, and that wouldn't have been an improvement
yeah,
because a CG Dooku flopping around, doing backflips and then cutting to a close up of Christopher Lee that's moving a lot slower and more stiffly. I'm sure Lucas thought of many ways to film that, and probably I don't know. I probably would have made a different decision, but I'm going to go ahead and defer to his judgment and say that given that he was working with Christopher Lee, and Christopher Lee is not exactly the most spry guy at this moment, this may have been the best way to shoot it.
yeah. I like the whole artistic view that we get, and coupled with the fact that I don't have to suffer through a dance routine from solid gold with lightsabers, that was a plus for me. It
Hmm.
wasn't as visually interesting as like the Empire Strikes Back fight, which is probably my favorite lightsaber battle in the original trilogy. Um, Luke versus Darth Vader in The Empire Strikes Back. Um, that I would have liked to see, but what we got in The Phantom Menace, I didn't want to see that again. So then we get another scene that I like it and don't like it at the same time, and that's when Yoda comes. And not for nothing, when I first saw the movie the very first time, I went crazy along with everyone else in the theater. Seeing
Of
Yoda
course.
there, and we knew Yoda was about to kick ass, and we knew that we were going to finally see Yoda with a lightsaber fighting. That was really cool when I saw it the first time until later on when I thought about it, and then it was a little less cool. Um, and part of that
What
is
what were your thoughts?
when I saw it or afterward.
No, no, no. You said then you thought about it and it was less cool. I'm curious. What were your thoughts that made it less cool?
Part of it is because I still think of Yoda as being so powerful in the Force and so kind of not wanting to fight unless there is absolutely no choice that I didn't really want to see. Like, I would have rathered him use the Force to defeat Dooku without ever having to draw a lightsaber. Him just being completely like that good. Like what is it? Is it jujitsu? Is the type of martial art where the saying is the best way to avoid a hit is to not be there. I could be wrong
Yeah.
about the type, but I thought it was jujitsu, where you're basically dodging the whole time until it's time to throw a punch. Um,
Yeah.
I, because no matter what Yoda says about how powerful he is, about how strong he is in the Force, no matter what, there is always going to be a differential that comes with size. Size does matter when it comes to combat, no matter what Yoda
Oh my
wants us to
God.
believe.
Ugh.
He's
All
got a
right.
he's got a
All right.
lightsaber that's
Once
half.
again, you're comparing what's going on with Earth, man. This is a galaxy far, far away.
It's not a
We're
major
talking
complaint.
about wizards here.
Yeah, I know.
Yoda's force when he rolls through the air and hits you is the force of a freaking freight train because it's not his mass that you're getting hit by.
I
It's the mass of the force behind him.
I understand that, and like I said, it's not a major complaint, but it bothered me
Okay.
because
All right.
whatever force Yoda has to throw at Dooku, Dooku probably has the same amount of force to throw back. No matter what,
Mm.
Yoda's not going to have the reach Dooku has. That's not to say that Yoda's incapable, but he's got a lightsaber that is half the size of Dooku's. Dooku could have swiped at Yoda, and there would be no
He's got a
way.
lightsaber that's half the size of Dooku's, moving at 4 times the speed.
Yeah, but that also begs the question, why does Yoda need to walk with a cane if he's capable of flipping and doing all of that stuff? But
Well, let me answer that for you,
no,
Josh.
I don't need you to because I understand. I know exactly what you're going to say, and you're right. He's
Okay.
using the Force. It's obvious, and I agree.
Yeah,
But
obviously.
again, what I
His
would have liked
limp
to,
is his actual physical normal stance.
yeah,
He is an old guy. He's 900 years old. He needs a cane. His limp is normal.
at
But
that point he's like 700, right, or
through the
800.
force, he no, he's 900 because he tells Luke when 900 years old you reach,
Yeah,
right? And that was like
that's
20
50
years
years,
later.
50 years. Oh,
Bro, that
you're
was 20 years later.
No, this is before the Clone Wars, so it would be like
This is oh
25,
yeah, you're looking at
about
25, 30
25
years. Yeah,
years.
right,
Okay.
right. But still, he's close to 900 years old, if not just over 900
Yeah,
years
yeah,
old.
yeah.
So anyway, point is he's old. And so and I think that's a beautiful thing about the Force and about Star Wars and about Yoda in
Yeah,
particular
that's not
is
my
that
big.
if you were it's like the Doctor Strange like he channels magic to let his hands work normally, even though physically his hands never got healed. And I love the attention to detail in the Marvel Universe because every single time you see a close up of Doctor Strange's hands, they are still trembling. He
Yeah,
does not overcome his problem. He simply learns to deal with it and he uses the sheer force of his mind to compensate for it. And I think everybody who's ever had a prosthetic, everybody who's ever lost a leg, everybody in a wheelchair, my son included, every single one of them need that story that if you fight, you can do anything
yeah,
because there's a force available to you that's bigger than yourself. And so Yoda, he comes in and he hobbles and then he bounces off the freaking walls and flies like a superhero. And then when it's all said and done, you hear him. He feels like he's done channeling this amazing power, and then he picks up his cane and hobbles away again. I think that's super cool.
I agree that, like I said, it's not a major complaint of mine. It's just that as cool as it was to see him with a lightsaber, I think it would have been even cooler to show him not needing a lightsaber. For Dooku to
That's
first,
possible.
what Dooku
I'd be
did
willing to
first,
entertain that. Sure.
like what Dooku did first was fine. Like I loved the where they were basically comparing force powers. He drops some rocks at Yoda. Yoda holds them up and moves them out of the way. Then he shoots lightning at Yoda, and Yoda bounces it back at him. And then he shoots more lightning at Yoda, and Yoda just absorbs it. And it's like, come on, is that the best you got? That was cool. If at that point, if Dooku had pulled out his lightsaber and Yoda is just like, he puts up his hand like Neo and like, does that whole come at me hand movement.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then Dooku starts, throwing his sword at him and swinging at him, and Yoda's just moving and not there. And then Force pushes Dooku against the rocks. Like I think
Yeah.
that would have been cooler
Yeah.
than
Possibly.
seeing Yoda with a lightsaber.
I
Again,
love I love how Dooku thinks he takes out his ace in the hole and shoots lightning at Anakin, and Anakin is naive, so he goes straight down. And
mhm,
then he does the same thing to Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan absorbs the lightning in his lightsaber and goes, "I don't think so." I
yeah,
love that because it shows a hierarchy of not just training, not just maturity, but an understanding of the Force. And then he tries to do it to Yoda, and Yoda absorbs it with his frickin' hand
yeah, it
and
doesn't
says,
even need a lightsaber.
"Much to learn. You still will have. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like I love that. There's a real hierarchy between Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda there, and you get to see it all within like 5 minutes.
Yeah. So my point was not that I didn't mean to complain about the logistics of Yoda fighting. It's that I still want to see Yoda as this Miyagi type Jedi Master who doesn't fight unless there is absolutely
Mm,
no choice. And in this case,
yeah,
I would have liked to see it even more that there was a choice. That
yeah.
even when confronted with a lightsaber, Yoda's just like, nah, nah, come on, put it away,
Yeah,
son.
I don't disagree with that. I really don't. I
Yeah,
don't disagree with that. I think that you have a good point there. I think it's fine the way it is. I think it would have been fine if you would have been in charge of that scene. I'd 6 1, half a dozen the other. I
yeah,
just think I really do like the idea of Yoda being this sort of eternal. I'm so powerful. I don't fight anymore.
yeah,
Don't even waste my time. You and your childish dances and your little lightsabers, it's nothing compared to what I command.
yeah,
And I if I wanted to, I could crush you and take over this galaxy, but that's not what the force is all about.
yeah,
I'm here to protect your life as well as I am to protect the lives of those that you threaten.
yeah,
That is the kind of Yoda that I would have liked to seen. But that's
exactly.
a different
That's
story.
like
That's a different story.
that's
That's
like
not
Captain
Star Wars.
America. That's like Captain America in Age of Ultron, not lifting the hammer. We saw that he moved the hammer,
Right, he
but
had the ability,
he knew he
but he
had the ability at
chose
that point,
not
and he
to.
chose not to. Whether it's because
Yeah.
he didn't want the responsibility or he just didn't want Thor to feel bad, we don't know. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. The
Well,
point is,
we'll do a Marvel series at some point.
yeah, yeah. But the
but
point is,
but yeah,
this is another
this
thing
is
where he's that powerful. He knew he could lift the hammer, and he chose not to because of his humility. And the same thing with Yoda. It would have been so cool for Yoda to
but the
stand
Yoda
there.
that we know versus the Yoda that we want perhaps are two different things. And I think that it's important to say, look, we live in this universe. Star Wars is done. It wasn't made by us. It was made by somebody else, and this is what it is.
Yeah,
Therefore, since that's who Yoda is, I'm not going to complain about what Yoda could have been. And if this other fictional character that we're dreaming up right now is actually somebody we think would be cooler than Yoda, then when are you and I going to write it into a screenplay and make a movie about this character that has a
right.
different name, but actually picks up where Yoda left off and actually does something that nobody's ever seen before? Can you think of a character that does anything like that? We just mentioned Steve. Steve in one scene for one half of a second. Wouldn't it be cool if there was an actual character like that that was just so powerful that he didn't bother fighting anymore and everybody looked up to him to train them, but he could only train them in the lower echelons of what he understands because they have to live 900 years to get to the point where they know what he knows. And when
Hmm.
they get to that point, he doesn't even have to fight anymore.
Yeah,
I can't think of a character that parallels that, and I would love to see a character like that because that's the kind of thing that I think you and I are both
I think
turned on by.
missed.
We love the idea of an ultimate hero that's that powerful and
Yeah,
yet has that much power under control.
yeah. And Yoda would have been. It would have been. It's a missed opportunity, even though no one really talks about that.
Superman
But
is kind of like that.
yeah, and
It's
not
one
for
of the reasons why
nothing.
Superman's my favorite.
He's my favorite for the very same reason that
Yeah,
Captain America is my favorite
right.
Marvel character
And
because
that's exactly why having him duke it out with another Kryptonian over a major metropolitan city, a major urban center where they're throwing each other through buildings and rubble is falling down and murdering little kids,
yeah,
like that, it's just a complete miscarrying of the character.
you're right.
Superman would have taken Zod and he would have gone to the moon to
Yeah,
have their little duke out. When you have a character that's that powerful, you have to be very, very careful how they wield that
Zack
power.
Snyder
Otherwise,
had
it's
his
super easy to turn them into a bad guy.
Zack Snyder had his explanation, which was that this wasn't the Superman we were familiar yet, and that he learned, like when he killed Zod, that was his scream. He screams out because that's when he realized the importance of not taking a life, and that's when he becomes the Superman that's more recognizable to us.
Whatever,
Yeah, that was
Zach.
his
He didn't
story.
learn
I
that
don't
from
buy it.
killing an enemy. He
Yeah,
learned that from his father. He
yeah,
learned that from his
I
farmer
agree.
mom.
I
That's where he
agree.
learned that.
I agree.
Screw you, Zach.
I I'm not going to go that far. I enjoyed the DC movies for what they were, but they are definitely unrecognizable at least as far as Superman
Yeah.
is concerned. It's not Superman to me. But
We
we're not,
digress.
yeah,
Different subject.
yeah. But in any case, so we finally we get to the end. Dooku talks to Palpatine. Well,
The
Sidious.
climax of the movie, where Padme runs out onto the platform and tries to shoot at Dooku as he flies away, and there's just a beautiful 2-second shot there where she's wearing skin tights and you can see her from behind. That's the climax of the movie, right?
Okay. Well, it was a climax
Did I
for
miss
something. I don't know. Maybe you climaxed. But but then so we
you
have
mean past that? Okay, so past that, yeah.
yeah,
Then we go to Coruscant, and then Dooku
Palpatine
is.
and
By the way,
Dooku.
Dooku's ship. We never even mentioned like Dooku's
Oh
ship is
yeah, it's like
super freaking
Solar
cool.
Sailor.
I love. Yeah, I love that where the solar sail goes out and then it like collapses back in, and
Hmm.
basically the entire cockpit is just like a glass dome. Yeah, cool design. So
It
he
reminded
he
me a
he
little
goes
bit
to
of
Coruscant.
wasn't it Deep Space Nine where
Yeah,
Jake
yeah,
and
the Cardassian or the Bajoran ship, the ancient Bajoran sail ship.
no,
Yeah,
wasn't it? No, the
yeah.
one that Captain that what his name? Benjamin Sisko and Jake.
Oh boy. Yeah, you're talking
Wi-
to a Star Trek expert. Yes, it was a
Yeah.
Bajoran ship. It was an
Okay.
ancient ship and they built it and sailed it to
Yeah.
prove that the ancient Bajorans were actually starfaring species long before everybody else.
Yeah.
And actually, if for any Star Trek fans out there, there's actually a race in a fourth season episode of Lower Decks. Where one of the character groups actually are in a Bajoran sail ship just like that. So that was a pretty cool homage. Anyway, side subject.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we get to Coruscant, and
Isn't
he
it
goes over the big
Coruscant?
gleaming buildings. Coruscant. He goes over the
I
big
thought
gleaming
I
buildings,
thought the
and
C
then
was silent.
what?
I thought the C was silent. I thought it's
I
Coruscant.
oh, it looks like Coruscant to me. It sounds like people say Coruscant. Am I
Oh,
mispronouncing it?
I don't know. I always thought they said Coruscant.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we go past the gleaming silver buildings and the flowing highways of flying cars, and then we go over the railroad tracks, as it were, and we cross over into a dark side of Coruscant that we've never seen before, and it's some kind of massive industrial looking like almost like an oil refinery. It's like exactly what you would expect the dark side to hide in, but there is a dark side of Coruscant. And then if that's not clear enough visually, he goes into this hangar, and the doorway of the hangar looks like a freaking maw full of teeth. Did you notice that? The actual opening of the hangar is jagged. Like if you didn't get it just perfectly in the middle, it would rip the side of your ship out if you missed it, you know?
Uh-huh.
Everything about what we're seeing now, from the Emperor's theme to the dark, dirty, black industrial piping to the teeth, the toothy, jagged opening of the hangar. It's all suddenly very dark and evil. And then he lands, and there he is, walking side by side with the Emperor himself.
Yeah. I looked it up. Yeah, the C is silent.
Okay, I will not pronounce it wrong anymore then.
It's
I've been pronouncing
Coruscant.
it wrong for 25 years now, so okay.
Just thought I'd point that out.
I am going to wait. I am going to wait until I hear one of the characters pronounce it the way I've
Liam
been
Neeson.
pronouncing it, and I will send that clip to you and explain to you why I started saying it
I don't
that
know.
way.
Watch episode 1, and
Yeah,
Qui-Gon says it
that's when
several
it.
times.
Yeah,
We're going to
yeah, yeah.
Coruscant.
Actually, several people say it several times, including the Naboo pilot of the ship. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to find out how they pronounce it,
Where
because
are we going? To Coruscant.
I must
Where?
have started saying that for some reason.
Yeah. Where are you going? To Coruscant. Where?
Yeah,
To
what,
Coruscant.
so that proves then that there are indeed French people on Coruscant, because they like to throw extra letters in that nobody pronounces or needs.
Well, and English don't?
Well, and we know for a fact that we've heard aliens that have French accents. So
Yeah, that's
there you
true.
go.
But
There you
but if
go.
you
Established Star Wars lore.
yeah, but English also has plenty of words that are silent. So let's not kid ourselves here. Anyway,
And I
uh,
love how Dooku's plan seems to be interrupted. The Death Star plans seem to be interrupted. The Geonosian droid manufacturing facility seems to be interrupted. The Geonosians are sent scattering. The Clone Wars has begun. The entire thing seemed like a complete shit show for the dark side. And then Dooku shows up calmly, and he gets in line with
you mean
the
Sidious?
Emperor.
Oh, no,
I'm sorry.
yeah,
Yeah, I said
Sidious.
Dooku. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sidious gets off and he's very calm and looking very controlled. And he stands next to Palpatine. They start walking along and he goes, "I got good news for you. The war has begun."
Yeah, yeah.
And the Emperor's like,
He's not
"Excellent.
standing next to.
Everything is going according to plan.
Yeah,
Like everything we just saw seemed like a complete failure, and yet it was all part of the plan all
yeah,
along."
yeah. To get everyone
That's
fighting.
scary.
Yeah,
That is scary. That is
and it's something
scary. It's
that
like
I feel
even
like we're seeing
it's
right now. I'm not like I said. I don't want to get
I
into
think we're
real
going to see it
political.
over and over again. We're going to see it over and over again in real life because it's
Yeah,
a fictional parallel of something that's happened many times throughout history.
yeah,
And
and
it's like the very thing you think
I
that you have
I
done
think
to
it's
stop the
happening
bad
right now.
guys has fed the bad guys.
Yeah, I think that it's happening right now. And that's more political than I want to get on this show. But
Yeah, well,
I think that there
we'll see.
are forces that are that are pitting Americans against other Americans, not for nothing,
Well, and that's
um,
been going on for a long time.
for a
And there
very
are
long time. Yes.
many instances in the last 20 years alone where the very thing that we thought we were doing to get away from what thought we were avoiding was the very thing that brought us closer to the thing that we were avoiding.
Yeah.
And
So
that scene captures it perfectly because the last 30 minutes of the movie, pretty much the good guys are taking charge and the bad guys are on the run. And
yeah,
then the masterminds behind the whole thing get together and go, "Excellent.
yeah,
Everything is going just as we wanted it to."
yeah. But I do
That's
love
scary.
Yoda. But I do love Yoda's line afterward, because I think that's just as poignant.
Victory.
Victory, victory. You
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
victory.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody thought that it was a victory
The
and Yoda
shroud of
was
the dark side has fallen.
he's
Begun
the
the
only
Clone Wars
one
has. Yep.
besides Sidious and the Emperor, he's the only one that looked at it as like, no, the bad guys won this one.
Yeah. And then we
And
get
that is the
and
Clone Wars.
yep.
I think
Then
we
we
did
get
it.
we get the wedding. We
We
don't
we
really have
we
to talk about the wedding.
we discussed a 2 hour and 20-minute movie in only 4.5 hours. Something like that.
um,
Anyway,
that's
hopefully
my
we've generated some good content. Hopefully
yeah.
we've offered some good opinions. Hopefully we've shown what it's like to have two very differing opinions that are still accurate about the same piece of entertainment. You know,
Yep.
maybe we've even added some lore, some understanding, some names, some behind the scenes information that people may not have heard before.
And for those of you who are listening, if whether you think one of us is more right than the other doesn't matter because here's us, we're still friends. We disagree about some of this movie very much and other parts not so much, but the whole point is we agree to disagree. We're fine with it. It's all good. We're still friends. Maybe you should try that. For those of you who haven't been trying it, give that a shot. For those of you who have, thank you for doing what you're supposed to do. So next time we're going to discuss episode 3. I think that we are kind of on the same page with that one. We
Well, I'm
both,
curious to find out. Actually, I'm curious to find out.
yeah. Um,
I think
and
it's gut wrenching for
oh
both of
yeah, yeah,
us, and I
yeah.
think that I do disagree with the internet in general that it is the best of all the prequels because it's well written and
I
everything.
think
It is well written, but like I don't know. I
I
think
do
we're
think it's the
so
best of
prone
the
to
prequels,
love.
but that's because I have dislike for episodes 1 and 2. I think
And I may have some cynicism as well that you can maybe help me unravel because I just feel like we love evil. I just think we
yeah,
love evil, and I think it's because we're a decadent, luxurious society that hasn't really suffered the pain of evil too much, and for that reason, we seem to love being entertained by evil. And the next movie is obviously the one part of the Star Wars story where it's an absolute destructive victory for evil over everything else, and then we're left in complete despair almost,
yeah,
and we love it, we
yeah.
love it, and I don't understand it, I don't love it for that reason. It has nothing to do with the dialogue, the writing, all of that is a whole different conversation. The reason why I don't love this next movie is because evil has an absolute victory. We see gut-wrenching things happen. It's a powerful, difficult war story to tear through, and in the end, you're just left hollow.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be a little bit of a fan of evil to finish that movie and go, man, that was the best thing I ever saw.
I don't think it's the best thing I ever saw, definitely, but I do think it's the best of the prequels. But again,
Well, I'm
we
looking forward to
just
tearing it apart,
yeah, we just
actually.
finished talking about the second of two movies that I, spent a lot of time talking about why I don't like them very much. So even though I
Hmm.
still like them, but I don't like them as much as
Yeah,
the
and as
se-
much as I defended them and as venomous as you were against them, I think we went through them in a very civilized way and I never really,
I didn't
I don't
mean
think
to
we
be
ever
venomous.
adamantly disagreed with each other.
Yeah,
Well, you were less venomous about them than I expected you would be.
Well, I try not to be venomous. I wanted to explain what I didn't like, but also, again, always keeping in mind that I don't hate them. I like them. I just don't like them as much as the original series,
And I
or even
personally
as.
think it's
Go
even
ahead.
more important to keep in mind that it is a piece of entertainment.
Yeah,
You can only like pizza so much. I don't understand why it's become a religious principle to insist that pizza cannot have pineapple on it, and everyone who thinks otherwise is worthy of being burned at the stake as a heretic.
yeah,
How in the world did we get so emotional over something that is so subjective?
yeah. But in any case, that's why I made this show. Because I want
Hmm.
us to get back to what I think is the best thing about Star Wars, which is that it incites a discussion.
Well, I
You know,
think it's fun.
yeah,
That's my
it is
opinion. I
fun.
just think it's pure fun.
It is fun, but it's also like one part of the fun is being able to discuss it with the people around us and discuss what we liked about it, what we didn't like, what we could have done differently, what we really appreciated. And there's,
Well,
you
touche.
know,
That is actually true. That
some
is part of
things
the fun. Is that it's
that I
something
got
worth
to,
talking about.
and there's some things that you get to experience that I don't experience. There's some things that I got to experience that you don't experience. So we all come at it from different perspectives. So we're going to wrap this up now. As I said, next week we're going to talk about episode 3, um, Revenge of the Sith. And in the meantime, as always, please remember, make tomorrow better than yesterday. See you later, everyone.